last season on Backseat Designers.
I wanted to say thanks to you guys for inviting me on, and as a token of my appreciation, I actually got you guys a present.
Oh yeah.
Here.
Presents.
Yeah, here. Take this present. Don't mind that it's ticking. Come with me. Let's go over here for a second and just leave these guys.
This is unfortunately the final episode of the season, and that ticking is getting quite loud.
But that was only the beginning.
Well, I don't know about you lot, but I'm not really feeling this whole being dead thing.
I know. It's quite disappointing, isn't it?
I was told there'd be biscuits in the afterlife. I don't see any biscuits.
And this Paul Masson vintage wine has gone a bit bitter.
Oh, fuck it. Let's just go back.
Oh, okay. Why not?
And so, our intrepid heroes defied all logic and reason, choosing to rise from the dead and return to their previous vocation. Despite the myriad of continuity issues that might arise from such an ill-conceived plot development, vowing to simply never speak of it again.
And we never will.
Also, Francisco Gonzalez was publicly flayed for his crimes. By all accounts, he enjoyed it.
Hello, and welcome to Backseat Designers Season V. I have been told it's not Season 5. It is, in fact, Season V. And today I am joined, of course, by my two lovely co-hosts. The first one is Frederick.
Hello.
And the other is Dr. Gareth.
Hello.
We're on a first-name basis this time. I couldn't be bothered to say your last names. Which is all, well and good. I am, of course, Mr. Plymert, the
the imagined professionalism of you just dropped to like a near perfect zero.
It's the first episode. It's the first episode. You got to ease into it, you know. It's been a while since I've done this. How long has it been since we last did an episode? That was
6 years.
The way. 6 years, something like that, half a dozen years or so.
I would say like May last year, but it feels like 6 years.
Hey, do you know what we did in August 2016?
What did we do in August 2016?
I just love the thundering silence that comes whenever I ask a question.
Whenever I bring up that anecdote, it ends badly, so I rarely bring it up if it is what I'm...
Right, not that thing that happened in August 2016. The other one, the good one.
The good one, yeah.
The one where we had a certain Mr. Gilbert on the horn talking to us about the state of the industry. His first name is
Ron Gilbert on this show.
No, I was just going to say his first name is not Ron. We haven't quite caught our white whale yet, but we are no less we are no less thrilled to have with us for the second time in the show's history, Mr. Wadjet himself, Dave Gilbert. Good evening, sir.
Hello.
It's a pleasure to have you. I love talking to you.
Oh, thank you very much.
You make me feel so humble. I was just saying before we started
you've met me, so I don't know.
I met you several times, and every time we have a conversation, I feel like I'm 15 years again trying to impress my dad. It's amazing.
He's making me feel old now.
Aren't we about the same age, actually?
I think I'm 42, so...
Oh, dear
God. We're not. I turned 38 this year.
Okay, we're not that far apart. Okay.
It's not that far apart.
I think at 38, though, you were far more successful than Trolls was.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. I mean...
success is relative.
Not in Trolls' case. I think you can make an absolute decision on Trolls.
Yeah, success is relative, failure isn't.
I mean, let's just rewind the clock. Wadjet got its big start in 2006.
Yes.
What were we doing in 2006? I think I was just picking my ass, wondering how to get out of college.
Yeah, about the same here. Like freshman.
Okay.
Second year of university.
Yeah. We have accomplished nothing, Mr. Gilbert.
To be fair, I mean, like when I was in university, I graduated in '98. Like the opportunities just weren't there for this kind of thing. So it's not like I could have done the same thing when I was in college. There was just no way I couldn't have done it.
Right. Adventure Game Studio did exist, but was called Adventure Creator and was a piece of shit that ran in DOS, as I remember.
I remember using the DOS version of AGS. It was really annoying to use.
I said I had a trick question. Well, not a trick, a surprise question, actually. Because we of course have to get the plugging out. You have been working now for God knows how many years, 3 years, 4 years?
About 2.5.
2.5?
3, yeah.
All right.
I started working on it like around, I really started discussing it with Ben and kind of hashing out the story with some consultants around like May of 2015. So it's been a little, but I didn't really start like full time, like full throated working on it until like towards the end of 2015. So I'd say 2.5 to 3 years. Yeah.
Wow.
That's pretty awesome. Also, I am trying not to leap into the juvenile pool right away by saying it, by remarking on the full-throated one.
Ooh.
I mean, it's going to come
18.
naturally.
Yeah, we're getting raunchy.
The thing that we are discussing is of course what I'm assuming will be your magnum opus, Unavowed.
Anything? I don't know if it's a magnum opus, but it's certainly big.
Yes, and my question is, Unavowed being by far the largest game you've ever built, it has RPG kind of elements. You have a party, you can solve the game in a number of ways. There are branching paths and all of this. My question is, what happened to the Dave Gilbert who said he wasn't into puzzles?
I never.
You heard it first.
I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. I've never really been into puzzles. At least I've never made them the focus of my work. They're puzzles in the games, but they're never like the main focus of what drives the game or drives the narrative. Like that's never been my focus is puzzles. It's always been like interactivity. If they're puzzles, it's more like, the things you do to get past an obstacle rather than, I mean, I guess that I guess technically is a puzzle.
I mean, absolutely. The reason I ask, just to ruin my own joke, it's not even funny, was that
I don't know.
That's the tagline of the show.
Sorry.
Yeah, I guess.
I thought it was a legit question.
It kind of was, but the reason is I've heard you many times say that puzzles are kind of secondary. I'm interested in telling a story, and I've always admired that you've stuck to those guns. And every time I hear you talk about Unavowed, there's always this talk of the gameplay, how it's different from your previous games. And again, with the gameplay elements of making your own party and multiple ways of solving it and all of this shit. So suddenly, where's the Dave Gilbert I knew? It's not fun.
Well, that has nothing to do with puzzles. It's just a different narrative structure, I guess, is the best way to put it. It's just a different way of, like, there's still a heavy narrative focus. It's actually more of a narrative focus because there's just a lot more of it, because you have like I have to basically write each section of the game like 5 different ways because of the different party combinations, which is actually pared down from I think when I first started out it was like 9 different combinations, and I just changed things and I brought it down to 5, which is a lot more manageable. So you're saying where's the narrative focus? I'd say there's a lot more of it this time.
Well, I'll bite what Trolls was kind of getting into, because, when we did the episode with you on the state of the industry back in August 2016, one of the main takeaways from the episode was that you've been trying to make these brief games in order to, kind of ramp up, was my impression. Because you wanted to start out safe. You didn't want, bless him, but you didn't want to pull an infamous Quest where you started out with the quote-unquote magnum opus and then got in over your head when that didn't sell well. So is Unavowed kind of the realization of that vision? Is this the payoff? Or are you like taking a chance that you hadn't expected yourself to take? Because it is a different scale than the Blackwell games.
Bit of column A, bit of column B. It's definitely something that I feel more capable of doing now. Like 10 years ago when I first started, like I would have had several nervous breakdowns by now getting this thing done. But when I decided I wanted to do this, excuse me, and it's been kind of marinating in my head for several years, even before I started. I kind of like felt like I had the clout and the experience to pull it off. Like I kind of knew how to program it. I knew how I'd structure it. I knew how, I knew I could do it. It was just a matter of it taking, longer and, there'd just be a lot more work to do, but it's work that I already know how to do. And it's kind of taking what I've already done and just kind of building on top of it. Like I already have that foundation. Like I can do one story pretty, not easily, but I know I can do it pretty well. And this is sort of building on top of that. Okay, maybe I can take this one story and have some branching, like that I can do. So I've built on that. So it's more of a extension of what I've already done, kind of like a few more miles down the road that I've already taken rather than going somewhere else entirely.
Right.
I have to commend you for going the multiple paths route, because if there's one thing I've lamented in modern adventure games is that we've sort of forgotten how beautifully non-linear adventure games can be. And I really wish that that more adventure game designers would embrace the things that the adventure game genre can do that usual types of fiction can't, movies and books and such. You can go off on non-linear paths.
That's sort of my goal, and it was I always bring back BioWare because it's a handy shorthand. It's a easy shorthand to describe what I'm trying to do. You choose your party, you go out, and then depending on who you bring out with you, they react to different things. They might be familiar with the area, or they might not be. They might know an NPC that you run into, or they might not. And when you get to the end of it, you think, wow, I wonder what would have happened if I brought these other characters instead. And it's kind of like that sense of that maybe you want to go back and try it again with a different combination. And it's that feeling of that I want to bring to Unavowed. Also something that would foster a lot more discussion on forums and Let's Plays and things like that, because most of the time when you play a traditional adventure game, you get to the end of it and it's done. Everyone's had the same experience. If you watched a Let's Play or a stream, you've gotten the experience. So you wouldn't really feel compelled to try it yourself. But if you watch a stream and you think, wow, like, all right, I see the various branches here. I wonder what would happen, if you went this way instead of that way, or brought this person instead of this person, then they might feel compelled to purchase it themselves and try it out. So that's my goal, and that's sort of what I've been doing with Unavowed, and why I've 3 years later, and I've kind of wondering what I got myself into. But I'm almost at the end, which is good.
Nice.
Would you say that there are any games that manage to take this BioWare tradition and move into the tradition, more traditional adventure game space with that structure, or do you actually see yourself as bringing something new to the table?
Well, I mean, it's hard to talk about this without sounding too pretentious, but
go ahead. It's
not like I'm doing anything new. I mean, this is a tried and true structure that works in, BioWare games, and the Shadowrun games did it. Dragonfall in Hong Kong did it very well. So it's a structure that's been tried and true. People like it. It's just never been applied to a non-combat combat-oriented game before that I have been able to see.
I completely forgot about the combat as well. Is there actual combat in Unavowed?
No, which is why I hesitate to use the word RPG or even BioWare to describe the game, because instantly people think, oh, BioWare, oh, RPG, that means there's combat, that means there's gear, that means there's this. There's none of that. And I really wish I hadn't used that to describe the game way back when I started, because people think, oh, well, why can't there be combat? It's an RPG. Like, no, it's not an RPG. How do I describe this thing?
I mean, honestly, I get a bit scared as well when people say it's RPG, like, and I go, oh, fuck, I have to manage stats, I have to do crafting.
No, none of that. And admittedly, the trailer didn't help, because there are some action-charged scenes in the trailer which make it look like there's combat, but there's no combat.
Good. What the hell was I thinking? You were saying something. Oh yeah, you almost preempted an episode we're going to do in the future. But we can tailor it to the current topic, which is state of the industry.
I can talk about anything.
Oh,
I could talk about myself forever if you let me.
So we'll just have
tempt us.
20 episodes of Dave Gilbert. You know, the V is not for Virginia, it's for the V and Dave. You heard it here first, folks.
Oh, all right. What you mentioned streamers and Let's Players, and one thing that has been a subject of some heated discussion on Twitter with, our dev friends and us just sort of jumping in like, we thought this was the kiddie pool. Hello. Is do streamers and Let's Players, do they spoil games? Because you can just technically just watch someone play through it and then you don't have to buy the game yourself. Do you think that's a more pervasive thing that's happened in recent years? Or
I mean, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. I mean, yeah, you watch through a whole Let's Play of a game, and then, yeah, you've got that experience, especially if it's purely content driven like adventure games are. But the interesting thing is I had a conversation with someone recently about this, and the interesting thing about a lot of streams, that if usually they're not all done in one chunk. They're like split up, because the streamers have lives, and you'll see that the number of viewers. You see that the number of viewers goes down with each installment, whether they've decided they're not interested or they've gone and bought the game themselves. So it can encourage them to buy the game. But yeah, if you do watch the stream of one of my games, there's no reason to buy it. Except to be nice, but when does that happen? And there's really no reason to buy it because you've had the experience. So yeah, I can't say that's a factor. I can't say that's not a factor, rather. But it is what it is, and you can't fight against it. It's there. So this sort of forces you to move with the times and create games that work with that instead of against it, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing with Unavowed.
I like that. That was actually the sort of defiant conclusion I drew away from the conversation, which was instead of limiting Let's Players and streamers in what type of content they can do, obviously, I mean, you have to put caveats. This Let's Play contains spoilers. Please go and buy the game. There's a link to it in the description. All of that shit. But on the other hand, I've seen, for instance, this game Subsurface Circular that I played on a live stream recently. On the main menu, there was a little button, and that button brought up a text box that said, "Hello, streamers. Thank you for playing my game. Please do not play more than 3 chapters of the game." I was like, yeah, you don't really get to tell me to do that. I respect you.
I can understand when your game is so niche or niche. I always forget which word it is. Like mine.
Second language.
Yes. When or what have you. What was I saying? Yeah, like when our games have such a it's a niche market. Like you're desperate for every sale because your market's very small and your margins are very small. So yeah, when you see people who get the experience for free, you gnash your teeth a little bit. But I mean, the market's more difficult now, but it's also bigger than ever. So it's like 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other. It's like there are people getting the game for free, but there's also so many people buying and playing games now that who's to say, that that this doesn't cancel each other out. I don't know. I don't know anything.
and don't get me wrong. I like to stay on the good side of devs. Ever since I started doing this horseshit very unprofessionally on my own, I always try and stay on the good side. If a dev tells me, please don't play beyond this point, then I will do that. It just irked me a bit that he put it in the main menu, so that when you start up the game, all your
I remember, I forget, I don't even know how we found out about this, but we saw it on Twitter. Like one of the beta testers, I don't even know how they, why they even thought this was okay, but one of the beta testers was streaming Shardlight. Was streaming a beta version of Shardlight. And there was only like one person, there was like 0 people watching. But at the same time, we're like, we hopped onto the chat and we're like, dude, not cool. And he didn't see the chat for a while. And suddenly I just heard him, we were watching it and suddenly we just heard him go, uh-oh. He's like, I'm so sorry, guys. And he turned it off, which I was very happy about.
I'm picturing this guy with an evil, twirling his mustache in an evil fashion, wearing a bandit mask.
Well, he didn't realize it was the wrong thing to do. And in this day and age when it's so easy to just put anything on Twitch and stream it, you don't realize it's wrong. So, it's just the culture is just there. You just Twitch or you just stream whatever. You don't realize it's wrong. So someone like this issue with the Descenders, Mike Rose the other day tweeted about how a really popular streamer broke an embargo, and he Mike Rose hopped onto the stream and politely asked him, please stop, this is under embargo. And he got the streamer was throwing abuse at Mike. And he got the whole community on board. They were like, dude, you can't tell us what to do. Nah, 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 nah. And so Mike, he didn't name names, but it was not a cool thing to do. That's,
hell no.
It's.
I'm making a frowny face now.
Frowny
face. Frowny face.
My angry face. Yeah, not cool, dude. Whoever that is.
That is not cool. It is. It's supposed to be a symbiotic relationship, I feel, between Let's Players and developers. Not that they should necessarily get in bed with each other, because if I play a game that I dislike, Order of the Thorn, for instance, I will tell them, but I will do it as nicely as I can. And luckily, Sean, he accepts criticism.
Not everyone has to like every game, and that's fine.
Exactly.
But it is a weird attitude towards copyright, I think, that some people... I don't know if it's a generational thing or if it's a cultural thing, but the idea that somebody can... The ownership of a game and how that's talked about is very odd, I think, with the way that a lot of streaming works, and I don't think we've properly negotiated how we deal with that.
No, it's a new frontier thing. And this is why I really, really like your solution to this, Mr. Gilbert, which is... in multiple paths, which means that you cannot see the entire game in a single stream.
Nope.
So that's a happy medium. I know it takes longer to do, 2.5, going on 3 years.
Longer. Longer than I expected, and longer than I really wish it took, because we need to get. So it's been a long time since we've had anything out, anything new, and we need to get back. We need to get back into it. So we normally release something new every year, and we haven't done that. So
2017 equals more money as well.
Yeah. Oh, obviously, that's also the thing. 2017 was the first year since I think 2008 where we hadn't released anything new at all.
Yeah. Wow.
So we always release something new every year.
I mean that explains the Reddit post we saw where Wadjet Eye still a thing?
Yeah, that surprised me because, like I said, it's just kind of a marketing fail sometimes. Or I'm constantly talking about the game. Like on Twitter, I'm going on like podcasts and being interviewed and going to conventions and stuff like that. And it's like I feel like I'm talking about it a lot, but then again, I'm not doing any paid advertising. Plenty of people are still unaware of it. Even people who follow me on Twitter are like, oh my God, I didn't know this game existed. I didn't know you were working on something new. I'm like, you've been following me all this time. Where have you been?
Maybe that should have been the title of the game, Unaware.
But I guess I guess either that's part of the state of the industry where more demands or higher demands from indies mean more development time, means sometimes you just drop off the radar, or there being so many of them. That's another thing I actually wanted to talk to you about, was that hopeful indies. We know a couple of hopeful indies. Us here at the Backseat Designers were testers on Jacob Janurka's Paradigm game.
Ooh, I still have yet to play it. I hear it's really, really, really good.
It is very, very fun.
If you like the sort of weird humor that we do, then it is definitely a good game.
From what I hear, it's like memes the adventure game is from what I understand.
I think it's probably the most surrealist adventure game I've ever played. That does it successfully, because Trolls and I sat down to play Blue Ice a couple of months ago, and that wasn't much fun.
Well, the funny thing is, I remember I never know what's going to work and what's not. Like, I remember seeing Paradigm and I remember seeing Dropsy. And I played a build of both, like, before they came out. And, like, way before they came out, like a year or two before they came out. And I remember playing, like, I said this about both of them. I'm like, this is either going to, like, completely drop off the rate. This is people are not going to get this at all, or it's going to be a huge bestseller, because they were both so out there, like way over my head, like not really for me. But like I had a feeling that this probably would resonate with other people, and they both did. They're both really popular games.
And they're built games.
There was no way I could like judge whether or not they'd sell or not. I had no idea. So like I'm really glad they both did well.
Well, with the with both Dropsy and Paradigm, I suppose more Paradigm, because Paradigm is more or less a one-man job, save for the music, really, and of course some of the voice acting. Although he pretty much voices every character himself too. And he actually got some mainstream attention, and by mainstream attention at this point, I mean like big league Let's Players and AdventureGamers.com actually.
Well, Dropsy got Jim Sterling playing it. Like Jim Sterling loved that game, and I the only time Jim Sterling played one of my games, he played Gemini and he didn't like it. so that was sad.
Well, he had to pick the one with the action sequences in it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but the hopeful indies, the ones coming out, basically one-man jobs on their own, and they're getting all of this attention. This is basically what you were doing back in 2006 when Wadjet became commercial. But there was their
games are bigger and better than mine are.
I wasn't going to say better, but I was going to say bigger. I was hinting towards the bigger thing. Since we convened last in August 2016, do you see that do you see the market as becoming more accepting or lenient towards, I hesitate to use the word auteur, but I think you know what I mean.
I mean, I can't say. I am not, like, I am horrible at judging what does well and what does badly. Like, I mean, there's several games that I played. Like, I remember I was at PAX East several years ago, and there was a whole big booth by Yzbrid Games, and they published several games. They published Valhalla, this cyberpunk visual novel game, and they had something called Y2K, which is this like hipsterish RPG, literally about hipsters.
These titles do not match the gameplay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And there was a game called, oh my god,
I wish that was
Masquerada. And I played Valhalla, and I'm like, oh my god, this game is so horrendously boring. These characters don't shut up. Oh my god, I don't want to play this. This is horrible. I turned over Masquerada. I'm like, oh my god, this game is amazing. I love it. It's everything I love. The graphics are amazing. The sound design is amazing. Everything is great. Guess which game flopped, and guess which game was a bestseller. Like, Masquerada apparently flopped, and Valhalla is like millions, it's like a license to print money, and like I am no judge of what's popular and what's not. So my tastes tend to be a little bit more, I guess, mainstream. I guess as Masquerada was a fairly mainstream game, but it was one that I really, really liked and did everything I loved really, really well.
It had ghosts in it.
Did it?
I don't know. I'm guessing.
Oh no. It didn't have ghosts, but it had Jennifer Hale in it.
Speaking of hipsters who try to move on with the new thing, I haven't played this game, but I'm going to pretend it has ghosts in it.
But where was I going? Yeah, with the hopeful indies. Now, you say that Wadjet didn't release anything last year, so you're kind of slipping under the radar. Another reason for that could be that you have these hopeful indies and you have more of them coming out with games. And I guess, as long as enough people are talking, it suddenly turns into white noise. So even though you're constantly talking about the game, maybe you're falling under the radar of people's attention span, because something over there just caught my eye.
There's so many people making games, and there is a lot of noise out there, and getting the signal through is very, very difficult. And there was a very interesting talk I went to at GDC last year. It was about the indie-pocalypse, and I'm always interested in hearing what people have to say about it. But they said something very interesting about Steam, where when you release a game on Steam, you're not just competing with the games that are coming out around that time. You're also competing with every game on Steam, because there's a new game. I release my game tomorrow, let's say. There's maybe 50 other games that are on sale for much cheaper. So there's always going to be something you haven't played. So most likely you'll be buying one of those. It's new to you. So you'd probably want to spend $3 on maybe a 5-year-old game that you hadn't played yet that's on sale, rather than spend $15 on my brand new game. And that's just the way things are now. And it's kind of like the games earn money, but it takes longer to get there than it used to be. Back in, I guess, 2011, 2012, I'd put a game up on Steam and I'd release a game, get on Steam, and it's like, all right, within a month I'll have $100,000. Easy. That's just the way it was, like a license to print money back then. It was so great. Now, that maybe I still get that $100,000, but it takes like a year of pushing it, of giving it discounts, putting it in promotions and things like that. It takes just longer to get there. So you still can earn the same money. It's just you need to kind of have, a long tail of stuff that will earn money for you in the meantime. So that's kind of where I'm lucky. Well, not lucky. I mean, it's like no luck. I did the work. I'm here, but it's like I released on Avowed and I still have 12 years worth of games that are continually earning money for me, while waiting for Unavowed to earn its money back. And then that goes on the end of the tail, and the whole cycle continues. So it's not like it is harder to get through the noise, but that's true for everybody. I mean, unless you're really lucky and somehow manage to get the word out so strongly and so perfectly, I don't know. There's some games that have managed to do that, like Iconoclasts. Have you heard of this?
I did, and
by name,
that just sort of broke through the noise like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
Suddenly everyone was talking about it. Cuphead did the same thing, although that had
been hyped up for a long time.
That had been a little more hyped up, but still,
I bought that yesterday, and I cannot progress in it. It is an impossible.
No
game.
one can. It is a game made for, again, streaming and let's playing. It's basically the stair quest of platformers.
True.
It's only a game.
Iconoclast is one of those games
Why
that
you
just
have
seems
to be mad?
Hi. Iconoclast is one of those games that just seem to emerge fully formed with tons of press that I had never read and tons of followers and tons of publicity. It just seemed to emerge. And I'm like, wait, where did this come from? I'd never heard of it, but it was this really popular game. And it was a really hyped up, well publicized game for several years before it was released. And somehow I had never heard of it. And so when people tell me they haven't heard of Unavowed, I don't get mad. All right, I might do the same thing.
A little bit of a frowny face, perhaps.
Do you feel that, have you been tempted to move on to a bigger scale in terms of advertising? Because both when we spoke to you last time on the show and when we're speaking to you now, you do admit that it's not something you pay for, but do you think it could be a game changer for you, or do you just not view that as a contributing factor, given
if I had the money to
niche?
burn on it? I mean, it's something that's not easily what's the word, like quantifiable. Like you spend X on marketing or advertising, you can't really determine how much of that, like if I spend X on advertising, I get X back. Like you can't really quantify it. It's just like a constant drip feed of information. It's one of these things you're like constantly bombarded with the message of this game existing that you think, okay, now I'll get it. I'll try it out now. You might, like, if you hear about a game, you read about a game in the morning, you think, oh, that sounds cool. You go to work, you come home, you've forgotten about it. And then you hear about it again. You're like, oh yeah, I remember that game. I'll try it in the morning. And then you forget about it in the morning. And then you see another advertisement for it. You think, oh yeah. I have to try that. I'll remember today when I get home from work. Eventually it'll pervade through and you'll get the game. That's how it works. But that's not, I can't keep that up. That's just not something I can do. No. So I don't know. Like I have a PR person, and I've talked to someone who is going to help me with a little bit of marketing, for I don't quite know. So
they're going to send unsolicited emails to Let's Players.
Chain letters.
Well, that's not advertising. That's PR.
All right.
That is actually something that a PR person does. They do write popular streamers and stuff. That's part of it now.
They also write unpopular streamers. I've gotten a couple of those.
And you might get, you might get a message back, hey, I saw your game. Can I have a key for your game? Some guy who has like one subscriber.
That happens.
That's the chestnut. Yeah.
You get like, I tend to ignore them because I always feel it's like the Groucho Marx thing. It's like, don't want to be part of any club that I would have me for a member. Like, if you have to like email me directly and ask me for a game, then it's like, you're probably not worth the effort. Like most of the time, that's just not, I don't know. Like usually they just get their own games and they play them. That's just what they do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. See, I have a follow-up to Frederick's last question, which was, will you up the marketing? So my follow-up question is, after Unavowed, will you be scaling back to those shorter games that you can pump out more quickly? Not to suggest that you're like a factory work or anything, but get some more games out so they can start, because that whole conclusion you just reiterated from our last one was, yes, I have a large back catalog, and that one keeps making me money all the way back to 2006. It just keeps going. So will you be scaling back after Unavowed, do you think?
I'm not sure right now. I can't really. This is the first time I don't have anything like of my own in the wings. We are working on a sequel to Technobabylon. James and Ben are working on that, and that is actually going to be done in Unity. So that's something new. So that's exciting. I'm very excited to see how that shakes out.
I'm very interested in that as well. I met James at Adventure X, and he said he had 3 versions of it going.
James,
2D, 2.5D, and a 3D version.
That's why it's taken him so long to really like finally get started on it, because he was spent about 3 years trying to figure out what kind of game it should be, and we finally nailed it. And we all looked at it and we're like, yeah, this is good. Let's just do this. And Ben is going to be helping out. Ben's actually learning some 3D, and he's helping out with it. So that's cool. Nice. So it's kind of a new thing for me, because when I worked as a producer, a publisher, I at least knew the tools. Now I don't. So I can't really be involved in my usual way. All I can do is like see the game later once like they build a part of it and play it and make comments from that. But I can't like dive in and see how it works and, make suggestions and stuff like that, because I have no idea. I don't know the tools. And I'm hoping talk.
Unavowed to the hoping.
The hoping, yes. I was just going to
say that when Unavowed is done, I'll be able to be a little bit more involved, because I would like to know. Oh, hello. What's going on out there?
They're coming for you, Dave.
It's the libel alert.
There's
our time must be up.
There's a hospital 3 blocks away, so we always get the ambulances coming by.
It was like talking to Francisco.
The joke.
Francisco lives next to a fire station, I believe. So every once in a while, just fire trucks roll on by.
There's a fire station 3 blocks away from here.
Nice. Well, at least you never.
We're a very safe neighborhood.
Yeah, I can tell.
What was I saying? Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to like maybe learning a little bit about Unity and how it works. And a few years ago, I tried learning Unity. I'm like, I'm gonna do my next game in Unity, and I picked it up and I gave up in a few weeks because Unavowed was such an ambitious game just on a design level. I knew that learning another engine on top of it would just make things impossible. And also, my mistake was when I was learning Unity, I was trying to make an AGS-like game within Unity, which it's not really designed for that. So I'm interested in learning more about the tool, and maybe we'll finally make the switch over to it. I don't know. So we'll see. I'm keeping things very open right now because I'm trying to think of what direction to take things, whether we stay where we are or try something new. I don't know. So
that's actually something that was just knocking around in my head as well, is that AGS, the engine that you've used since 2006, and through your legendary days, is primarily geared towards adventure games. Obviously, that's kind of the name of the engine. But by branching out, do you also feel that Wadjet might start branching out? I would imagine you wouldn't leave storytelling behind. I mean, that's kind of your brand.
It's like what I talked about at Adventure X. Like I don't want to go too far out of that comfort zone because these games take so long to make that like not being comfortable for a long time would be a problem. But I think that, the one issue I have, and you guys, we have talked about this before, is that how I kind of always have, quote, issues being referred to, having our games referred to as being retro or like a love letter to the past. Or
never heard that. No. Isn't it like Monkey Island? Your games are like Monkey Island?
That does bother me a lot, but yet my games do look like that. They look retro. They feel like a retro game. And it's like, even though I don't think of them as retro, and those are two things that I can't really reconcile. So it's like, do I take things in a different direction and like take the skills I have with, narrative design and character and story and like apply that to something else? Or do I stay where I am because I know it works and I know I can make it and I know they'll earn money if I can get them out in a reasonable amount of time. So that's the choice I'm sort of faced with, and it's difficult because these games support us and I have a child and we have a mortgage and stuff, so it's hard to like make that choice and just leap into something new without really knowing where I'm going to land. So it's been something that I've been kind of debating for a while. So if I do go off in another direction, go back to your question, will I go back to doing smaller things? If I decide to go off in another direction, I will probably start small. I probably start with smaller projects and build my way up again, the way I did with AGS games back in 2006.
Right. So I would imagine that another thing would be the loss of control, in that you can't, if you go off into the other engine, either you have to sit down and learn the engine, but not just the engine. If you go off and do, let's just say, a survival horror game or some like a genre that's a little left field, not too left field.
That's way left field. I would not do survival horror.
Real-time strategy.
Really? Well, it's still survival horror are still very story based.
I mean, if I'm talking about in terms of like, I'd still do like adventure style games, but it would be just like not the, straight 2D pixel art stuff that you've known from us. It would still be the same stuff. It would be like this, but it would just play differently. Like I played a bunch of, and again, this is all theoretical. Like I don't want anyone to listen to this and be like, oh my God, why should I doing this? I don't know what I'm doing yet. But I have been talking about it and I'm not making a secret of it. It's like I am definitely thinking of branching out and trying something new. But of course I said this 3 years ago. I'm like, I'm totally moving to Unity, and I didn't do it. So who the hell, a year ago, Ben and I could still be doing the same games and we'll be fine. But it's out there. I'm mulling the option in my head. Sure. Once Unavowed is done and out of my head and off my plate, then I'll start thinking about other things to do. And the fact that Technobabylon is going to be worked on, that's sort of the benefit of producing a game instead of writing it myself is that there is a bit more time that I can use for my own, projects and thinking about how to take things while, kind of supervising this other game. So that is something I'm going to be doing while Techno Babylon is being worked on.
Oh, of course, and you don't want to get stagnant either. I mean, it's one thing to rest on the laurels that made you a legend in the flesh, but
I
like making you uncomfortable for some reason. I'm very sorry.
Whatever.
It's making all of us comfortable, trolls.
I know.
I'm blushing here.
I mean, I do have a question if.
Oh, good.
If you don't mind, because I was kind of thinking, we've been talking a bit about the state of the industry now, but I want to turn it back towards your kind of games. And I just want to ask one of the typically broad questions that I ask, rather make a statement and have you instantly disagree with me. How has your writing evolved from way back when you did Blackwell Legacy? I mean, I think it would be apparent to most people playing your games that your writing has evolved. But how do you kind of view your journey from that point, doing those small games, to now where you're doing a much wider narrative?
Your journey from Milan.
I can tell you one way my writing has changed is that I like to focus more now on exploration and kind of telling a story through like just environmental storytelling, like discovering the backstory and the mystery or whatever by exploring. And
like the implicit storytelling that we spoke to John Romero about a couple of episodes earlier.
Yeah, I did not listen to that one, unfortunately.
It's a good one. You should.
I will just cross my fingers and say, yes, that's exactly what I mean.
Well, what he was basically saying, just to briefly summarize, was that when they started out on Doom, he kind of wanted to have these tables with the corpses of Marines who had been killed by monsters while playing cards. The environment would tell the story. Yeah. And of course, they kind of held back because of technological limitations and because the whole thing was streamlined a lot, but there was a lot of not explicit storytelling, not like big text crawls, but the environment would tell the story about how the demons got there and what happened.
I tend to focus more on like what is not so much telling the story of here's what happened and here's what's happening, here's what's going to happen, here's what happened in the past. It's not just about telling you a story. It's about like making you feel something and making you care about the thing that you're experiencing. And that is just like so important because I played so many games and adventure games in particular where the developer, the writer just gives you no reason to care about the character. They just expect you to be engaged because you're playing the game. And so naturally you're engaged and you're invested in what's going on. I'm like, that just doesn't quite cut it with me because I've played so many of these games that I really want to be taken out of myself. I want to have like an experience, it's like going to the movies. You want to be taken out of yourself. And I want to try to give that. I'm always really, really looking for that in games that I play, and I so rarely get it. So I'm very conscious of that fact when I'm right. I mean, this sounds so, I'm not saying that I do it, no one else does, but I'm saying that I'm very aware of it when I'm writing, when I'm designing, when I'm putting together a bit of game, to think of, okay, why is the player caring right now? Like, where is the engagement? Where's the focus? Like why does the player want to do this? Why do they care? Don't always get there, but it's always something, and it's always in the back of my head, and I'm constantly revising things. I'm like, there's no reason to care about this, so I'm just going to cut it all completely and change it. And so since I spend a lot more time on individual story beats. And so naturally, I decided I'm doing that in a game where I'm designing every section 5 times. So it now takes 5 times. Everything takes longer, and then multiply that by 5. So what have I got into?
Probably a very replayable game, I would say.
I'm hoping so.
It sounds like it.
But I love what you're saying about environmental storytelling because having played a lot of adventure games, since I started streaming, and before that even, eventually. One of the things that strike me after having spoken to you for a number of times at Adventure X and on the show and on the Space Quest Historian podcast, I always run into these things that I then realize is something that they should have listened to from you. And these are things like, but seriously, I'm playing a game right now. I'm not going to name it, but it's
so much.
The game I'm playing right now has some very, very long-winded dialogue. And every time I start recording one of the episodes for this, I know that I'm going to be sitting here for over an hour, and I'm going to have to really take a hatchet to this game to cut it down to a 30-minute episode because the characters just will not shut the fuck up.
It's sort of like doing an episode of this show, isn't it?
I found that about I played Read Only Memories not too long ago, and because I kept hearing these amazing things about it. It's just an amazing game, and I played it, and I'm just like, so when did the characters stop talking? But what's interesting, and here's something I learned over the holiday. I played a bunch of kind of more modern-ish narrative games because I kind of wanted to see what other people were doing. And the game that was kind of the big revolution moment for me was playing Oxenfree.
Ah, yes.
Because that game is wall-to-wall talking. Yes. The characters literally do not shut up throughout the entire game, and it's fine. And I realized why, because the dialogue and the talking does not interrupt the game. You can keep moving around. In fact, like all the levels are designed with like winding paths and backtracking and things like that to facilitate more conversation between the characters. Exactly. And I don't mind it. I'm sitting there listening and really engaged by what the character's saying because it's kind of like I'm walking and talking with my friends than being talked at to by my friends. Like I'm doing stuff with them as opposed to just passively listening. And just that little adjustment was such like an eye opener. Like, wow, like I never like that just makes so much sense. Like it kind of took all of my usual rules that I have for myself about dialogue and just set them all on fire.
But in
characters.
In that
These
situation, though,
don't shut up.
has the dialogue become part of the environment? So it's going back to what you were saying about wanting to create environments. Yes,
exactly. It's all become like part of the experience, and it's like it used to be when I wrote a game, it was just purely story. Like this is the stuff that happens, and that was like that was the thing I wrote to engage people. But having worked with Ben and Thomas and working with all these brilliant people that I have over the last 12 years, it's like I'm realizing there's so many more elements to these games and to creating any kind of media that really enhance the experience and really bring you in there, not just story. Like it's everything. The story is a big part of it, but there's just so much more there that can bring you in. And I'm really just kind of fascinated by all of that stuff. And so when I'm designing now, I often try to focus because I know I can do the narrative. I know I can write the dialogue. I know I'm strong at that. So when I design a section of my game now, I focus on the like interactive stuff first with my crappy line art and just having the characters walk around and do stuff to kind of get a feel for how it feels before I really start writing the dialogue and really getting into the story. Because I know I can do that. I've reached a point where I'm fairly confident I can do that, but it's everything else that I really want to level up at. And that's another reason why this game is taking so long. I'm really hyping this up. It's like people are still going to think it sucks.
No, I'm looking
people who are still going to say it sucks and all this work is for nothing. But I'm prepared for that.
I'm looking forward to playing it. I will be playing it on the air, and I will only be playing one path, so people will have a chance to go and buy it in the link in the text description box. I could literally be talking about this subject all day. We were just getting into the bit where you said Oxenfree, the dialogue keeps moving while you're still playing it. That feels so freeing because normally in adventure games, everything just stops. Almost someone hits the pause button when there's a dialogue going. I was going to bring up Life is Strange Before the Storm, which is basically a game on autopilot. You barely even do anything, and that pisses me off.
I'm talking about Before the Storm, not the original Life is Strange.
Not the original. The original one is endearing.
Oh, it's great.
I love it. To me, at least. Yes, I love it. And I'm super disappointed in the other one. Unfortunately, we're out of time.
Oh, wait, how long have we been talking?
An hour or so.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I
this
mean,
says
we're
1 hour on
not-
this thing.
Yeah, I mean, we're not coming up on the end times in that way, but we tend to keep them on 1 hour because people kind of drift off. After that.
I think the last one was 2 hours, but yeah, no, okay, we're almost out of time. All right, 1 hour is a good amount of time.
That was a special, and this is a regular episode, and we're kind of getting back into the regular old stuff again.
Well, you're welcome to have me back on again. I always love talking to you guys.
Absolutely will.
Warms my heart. I almost called you Dad.
Oh, dear.
That got embarrassing right at the end there. Can we alert that one?
No, it's staying.
No, that stays in. All right. Fuck you.
Who's libeled? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know who got libeled, but it's the only alert we have. It's like that episode of Red Dwarf. Are you sure you want to go to Red Alert? That means changing the bulb. But anyway, I would love to continue this discussion. It'll have to be some other time.
That's fine.
So I just want to thank you so much for being on the show once again.
You're welcome.
And
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure. And of course, we will see you this year at Adventure X.
Yes.
Oh,
Down in wherever it might be.
Wherever it might be.
Assuming you don't get lost.
Hopefully not a pub in the middle of a field.
Actually, I'll show up at
I
a
would
pub
be
in the
fine
middle
with
of
that,
the field.
but
Yeah, me
it would have to be a very, very big pub in the middle of
It would,
very field.
because there are a lot of awesome people attending it, and it would be great if they didn't have to turn people away.
Yeah, I felt bad about that. That really sucked, especially people who came from like outside of the country. That was really, I felt bad for them.
Yeah, the Gibbous guys almost didn't get in. They had to sort of wait outside. And
Weren't they exhibiting?
They were not exhibiting. They just brought a laptop. Kind of out of spite, really. Yeah. And also, when you see two Romanian dudes hanging out outside of a venue in London, you assume they're up to something. And Liv just looks like he might turn into a bat at
When
any
they're
point.
carrying laptops.
This is why we voted Brexit.
Oh yeah. Right.
And on that dark bombshell.
Yes, and before we get into the politics, that's a great idea.
Absolutely. We love you, Gibbous people. Incidentally, Liv is a wonderful sport. So I can say this, of course.
We love you, Dave Gibbous.
You should probably go and follow Dave on Twitter, where he incessantly talks about himself at Wadjet Games. Well, you said that yourself.
I can, yes. Well, you can't talk about your own self on your own Twitter feed. Where can you?
Exactly. And you should do that. However, you should endeavor to spell Wadjet correctly, people of Reddit. It is with a J and not a G. You can figure out the rest for yourself, hopefully.
Yes.
And Unavowed is coming out sometime in the 2000s. I mean, it's not
coming
going
out
to be
this
the year
year.
3000.
This
It's coming
year.
out this year.
Oh God! If it takes longer than this year, I will literally die. Like I will die.
You heard it here
Well,
first,
yeah,
people.
we will hold you up to that date.
Oh, great.
Start the countdown.
Doesn't come in a bundle. That's one for the soundboard. We're going to have to sample that one. And also, you could probably, if you felt like it, follow us, the Backseat Designers, on Twitter at BS Designers. We do have a Facebook group that I hope is going to pick up some steam again. It's on facebook.com/groups/Backseat Designers. And we do have a Patreon fund. Sadly, Fred had to quit doing coke because he kept talking like Virginia Capers. It sort of had the reverse effect on him. The more coke he did, the more his speech slowed down. And honestly, if that guy talks any more slowly, the world's going to start turning backwards.
It's like my speech was turning into a like a sonic black hole.
Sonic black hole. Didn't Soundgarden make that album?
No, well, that was Supermassive Black Hole by Muse.
Ew.
Shut up! For God's sake, just shut up!
Absolutely. I think it is about time we said goodbye, Fred.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Oh, I thought you said goodbye,
You're
friend.
you're not Fred.
I thought you said friend.
I'm not Fred. I'm the imposter.
And goodbye, Gareth.
Goodbye.
See, no one wants to be Gareth.
He speaks. He finally speaks.
I thought you said friend. Gareth doesn't sound like that.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I don't know what Gareth sounds like.
Yeah, no one knows what Gareth sounds like.
I'm sorry. I opened that door up for you. I apologize.
And I leapt through it with glee. So we will see you next episode. Ta-ta, everyone.
Right on. Bye-bye.
No more for today.